Year-end list time. We have finally reached the end of 2021, and while we have had some breakthroughs when it comes to the pandemic, and while we are starting to claw our way back out of the doldrums of that was 2021. Rap music did have an incredible year, but it also had some really bad moments, and I want to focus on those, get all the garbage out of the way before we move on to the great stuff that 2021 had. The top 5 worst rap albums of this year, with some dishonorable mentions. I'm going to preface before we start. This is strictly my opinion. You can love these albums, you can like these albums. You can question of why they're on this list and why I've ranked them accordingly, but this is my list. I don't want to drag your enjoyment of music through the ground. I'm not going to say it's just like this is downright garbage. This is the list. Like, if you listen to this album, you listen to terrible music. That's not the way I am. That's the beauty of music, where I can hate these albums to the bottom of my soul. I can hate them so much that I just want to throw things. But someone else can enjoy them, and that's the cool thing about music, that we can have different tastes. We can have different kind of likes and dislikes of music. So just respect my opinion. We can have a great discussion about it. That's just all I want to say. It's just strictly my opinion. Just don't take it all that seriously. And I'm going to start with dishonorable mentions. Now, dishonorable mentions kind of falls into a category in and of itself, where it's more disappointing and it's just more incredibly boring. It's not really anything standout, anything crazy. I have Most of Trap by Polo G, Migos, Meek Mill, Young Nudie, Lil TJ, the list goes on, where trap has become just very unoriginal, has become very formulaic, and it's become very by the numbers, and it seems incredibly easy to make, it's very marketable to make, and the inspiration, the creativity that we saw in trap in the mid-2010s going on to the later 2010s is just not there anymore, and in 2021 is a great example of how trap has become very watered down and has become very by the numbers and very sedated. And there needs to be a shift before it just totally goes down the drain and we see a terrible decline. CLB by Drake is on here at the dishonorable mentions. And while this album is not as bad as people say it is, it's just incredibly incohesive. It has some of Drake's lowest points in his career. And we have gone through this topic before, where talking about his haters, talking about the beef with Kanye and Pusha T, talking about him being a father. We have gone through this before multiple times, and each and every release, starting off of Scorpion onwards, it has gotten worse and worse and worse, and this is probably the worst part of it, where it sounds incredibly incohesive. And yeah, it's totally disappointing because we've been waiting so long for it. Smiley by or by 2, I have listened to this, and you would think it's like, why is this on dishonorable mentions? Why were you disappointed by this? I was intrigued by Smiley's more aroused delivery. It was a unique thing, and when you put it up to a 15 to 17 track mixtape, like I believe this mixtape is, it really starts to become background noise. That little nugget of uniqueness and interesting kind of qualities, it totally gets drowned out. That's why it's on here. Henrique, I Get Lonely Sometimes. You've never heard of this EP before, and I don't blame you. This is some Christian melodic emo trap, and just the subgenre and that title I just gave you, if that just sends you cringes down your spine, it should. This music, while it has an audience and it does its purpose, I'm not going to drag this album through the mud and like totally take a total dump on it, because it does have an audience, and I don't want to disregard someone's faith and someone's religion, because I am a Christian also. I just think that this music is incredibly unapproachable, and I think music should be a lot more open. It should be open for everybody, and I just don't think with this EP, with this kind of music, I think it just becomes very centered in on one particular smaller group, and it's just not my thing. Not to mention it sounds like Kid Laroi, and that's not my thing either. Pop Smoke Faith, more of just kind of a discussion, or more of just bringing up that this posthumous release of Faith and the dealing with Pop Smoke's estate has started to become very questionable. Faith is a prime example where we've had a deluxe and a double deluxe I question the intentions of this release. I question a lot of things about the release, and now, not to mention, according to sources, we don't have any more music left in the vault, and you could have taken those little bits and pieces that you had left, make it even a small EP, and just fine-tune that, but now they are thrown onto a middling and mediocre album that does have some moments, but overall, it's something that is not memorable, and Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon has executed this much better. And French Montana, they got amnesia. I've got amnesia. I don't even remember this album. I remember certain points of it, but it's just so boring, and it's French Montana. I don't expect anything, and it is just incredibly boring. So let's just get on to the list, because I've dealt with the dishonorable mentions long enough. Number 5, we are starting with DJ Khalid. Khalid. DJ Khalid has made this album before. We have had Major Key. We have had Grateful. We have had Father of Assad. And now we have this. Major Key had a good mix of underground artists, had a good mix of bubbling artists, and it had a good mix of highly established artists. And it came together as a good compilation album. While it did show a small bit of cracks, it did show an incredible amount of promise. Grateful did execute that as well, but it started to show the cracks even more. Father of Assad was an incredible downfall, where it started to really show that there was an inherent problem. And now with Khalid, this formula is downright broken. It does not work. This whole kind of formula, the compilation kind of tape or album that DJ Khalid has in his pocket, it needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. And I think with DJ Khalid at this point, with the success with I'm the One, and Wild Thoughts and all this kind of stuff, he is trying to find unorthodox kind of combinations to make a hit. And the Khalid album has so many examples of stuff that should not work, and they don't work. And the prime example of this I can think of is the song with 21 Savage and Justin Bieber, with the instrumental kind of falling more into the Justin Bieber Changes kind of sound before Justice. And I don't like that album to begin with, but Justin Bieber sounds all right on it. But when you throw 21 Savage on it, you question. It's just like, why is this a combination? Why is this a thing? And you're going to question that a couple times on this album. It's just a total breakdown. It is not a good listen. It does have some gems on it. It has some good moments. But it is just a really odd and interesting mess. While the albums and stuff on my dishonorable mentions were just boring, the reason why it's on this list is that it really is interestingly bad and interestingly really perplexing as to why these combinations were put onto an album like this, and you would expect them to work. They just don't. Number 4, DaBaby, back on my baby Jesus shit again. I just talked about this album, I believe it was a couple weeks ago at this point. And it's one of my favorite videos on the channel, because I was just having fun just talking about that album. And I was having incredible moments with it. I was overtired. I was hysterical. And 5 for a dub. I am still going to stand by this statement. That is one of the worst hooks I have heard in my entire life. I have been listening to rap music since 2013. And for the 8 years that I've been listening to rap music, DaBaby has taken the crown of the worst hook of all time. And there are so many other moments on this album that make me wince, that make me cringe, that make me die inside. And it makes me question, along what I said with the video, it makes me question, was DaBaby good in the first place? And while DaBaby did have some intriguing qualities, had interesting qualities, going early on into kind of the rise of his career, when we're thinking Baby on Baby, when we're thinking of Kirk, this album makes all the other releases questionable. Because the delivery, the flow, the production has all been the same this entire time. And it is now to the detriment of all of his music. Not to mention it's amid all the controversy. And there's some very questionable lyrics on this EP. I'm not going to bring up that jail line that's on the last song. It is just a terrible mess. And that's it. It's just basically, if you want to put it into words of why this is on here, it's because it's DaBaby in 2021. DaBaby in 2021 is pretty bad in itself, and that's a good description. It's DaBaby in 2021. Number 3, YBN Namir Visionland. I completely forgot this album dropped, which is odd, because I was originally going to make, and I still want to, I want to make a very in-depth video of why this album is so incredibly bad. And the reason why I wanted to make that video, and I still want to, is that if you are an aspiring rapper, if you're an aspiring artist and you want to really analyze some albums, and of course you can analyze classics and how to master cadence, how to master melody, how to master writing a good hook, writing a good verse, having some unique deliveries and whatnot. This is a great example of listening to an album that basically it is rap gone wrong. It is where you can learn lessons of this is what bad rap sounds like, this is what lazy rap sounds like, this is what everything you have learned about rap is basically thrown out the window. It is just a total mess. And while there's actually like one or two tracks that do show a decent bit of potential, a decent bit of personal content from YBN Nahmir, this album is just incredibly fascinating for all the wrong reasons. It's an incredibly interesting project of how it completely throws the just general idea of a trap and rap album. It just throws it out the window to make something that's incredibly terrible and incredibly incohesive, and it has some terrible risks. Not to mention, we've heard Soul Train, we've heard Wake Up. There is worse on this album than Soul Train. If you want to take a listen to the middle portion of this album. You will find worse than Soul Train. Soul Train has come around to people where it is so bad that it's just fun. There is worse on here. Go listen to it if you really want to hear some terrible music, if you want to hear some terrible rap. Number 2, Rich the Kid and Lil Wayne, Trust Fund Babies. This is the epitome of an album that I wanted to enjoy for how bad it is, but it's just so incredibly just aggravating and nauseating and boring. And it falls a lot on the production, it falls a lot on Rich the Kid himself, and it falls on Lil Wayne not giving his A game on this. So every facet of this album is a disaster. I'll start with the production. The production is very cheap. If you were to go on BeatStars.com and look up Free for Profit instrumental, you would find over half of this album on it. All the instrumentals you would probably find on a BeatStars page with the person just free for profit, doesn't have a lot of subscribers. And while BeatStars, and I'll just go on a little tangent, it's incredibly important for artists to get a good head start and to put free instrumentals out there for basically their publicity and to get connections. The quality can dramatically vary, and this is the bad side of it, where it sounds incredibly typical, it sounds incredibly boring, or it sounds too kind of out there to the point where it sounds really strange. The second track in particular sounds like it's a sample from like a 50s horror film that's like black and white, like a Planet 9 from Outer Space or a terrible sci-fi movie. And it is so overblown, it is so loud, and it does not mesh well with Rich the Kid and Lil Wayne. That is just a total mess. Rich the Kid, he has been an interesting character to the point where he has gotten worse and worse and worse, but still has a fan base. And this is the worst rapping I've heard this year. I talked about YBN Nahmir, of how learning and taking lessons of how terrible rap can be. I think Rich the Kid's moments on this album are just even worse. Especially on the first track, where Rich the Kid is falling so far off the beat that like he is 6 or 7 syllables in, and the beats already came back around, and you're supposed to start your next line, but he's still 5 or 6 syllables in, and he's not done yet. It's just incredibly choppy, and it's incredibly confusing, and it's just really disjointed to listen to. And Lil Wayne does not bring his A game on this. He kind of goes back to that stage in his career where he was not caring about material. He was not caring about writing. He was deep into drugs and substance abuse. And he had a lot of corny lines. He had a lot of really gross lines back in those days. And this is kind of going back. It's reminiscent of that sound. And whether you can see this as like funny, because are some funny puns and double entendres and all this kind of stuff, it's lazy, especially when you consider that Lil Wayne has had an incredible comeback year with these amazing feature verses on like Hot Wind Blows and Bash Money, and so much more interesting verses that really pale in comparison. And really, it's a really bad contrast with Trust Fund Babies and how just very uninspired Lil Wayne is on this compared to like Bash Money and Hot Wind Blows. And now to number one. This is probably expected. This is probably something that you clicked on this video, and if you've followed my channel, you should have expected this. It is Bobby Tarantino 3. It's a mixtape, I know. And I'm still perplexed, and I'm still very upset by this album because I have been following Logic for so long. And if you haven't watched the video of saying it's the worst album this year or Logic's worst album or mixtape, I'll call it mixtape. I know I got a lot of dislikes for it, but it's just, I know it's a mixtape, and I know people have taken it to another side where it's just, they have fun with it for how bad it is, or they have fun with it where they're not supposed to take it that seriously. When you come out of retirement, when you make this big statement, you have the Michael Jordan kind of paper saying that I'm back, you expect to come back guns blazing. You expect to come back with a fire in your belly, with just like wanting to say something, wanting to contribute something like amazing. But you come back with Bobby Tarantino 3, which is incredibly corny, as Logic has been for the past few years, trying to be funny, trying to just throw things at the wall. And there's that saying, it's like throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Everything was thrown at the wall in this mixtape. Nothing stuck, but it went onto a mixtape anyways. And you get Stupid Skit, which is the worst skit. If I was talking worst hook I've heard in music and rap ever in my 24 years living on this terrible planet. Stupid Skit is the worst interlude I have ever heard. It is terrible. It is not funny. I know it's just not funny, and I can't stand it. This album has the mixes of the worst releases Logic has had, Particular Confessions of a Dangerous Mind and Supermarket. It's just a disaster. I've already talked about this album or mixtape. I keep calling it an album. I've already talked about this mixtape so much. And it's made me mad every time I have come back to it. And I can't see it being anywhere else but number one for me, because it just makes me upset. If there is no redeeming qualities to me, there's nothing redeeming quality to it. There is nothing that makes me laugh in like a good way or a bad way. It's just a downright bad mixtape for me. And it is my number one worst rap album / mixtapes of this year. So that is my year-end list of the top 5 worst rap albums. And now I feel incredibly disappointed because I've just named off some terrible albums. But let me know what your top 5 is. Let me know of some other albums that were not mentioned here on my dishonorable mentions or my top 5. Keep in mind, this is just my opinion, and if you love these albums, that's fantastic, and I'm glad that we can have music where I hate it, but you love it, and we can just have these nice moments and all this kind of stuff. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for all the support that I've been receiving for the past few videos. And you're going to be catching me on the more brighter side of the top 10 lists, where we're going to be talking about the top 10 albums and then the top 10 songs of 2021. So thank you so much for watching. God bless. Have a good night. And see you all later. Peace out.